The rough days growing up in Sherlock Crescent in Duane Park were part of the training for retired Sergeant Major Peter Hall. He tells his story on Profile. Welcome, I'm Ian Boyne. Sergeant Major, good to have you on the show. I talk about Sherlock Crescent, and for those who know the reputation of that area, certainly in the 70s and 80s, they would know that kind of tough community that it was. So when you would later serve in the Korean Peninsula and, serving in areas of Japan and Hong Kong and so on, those rough days, that tough environment would have been part of that kind of preparation for later life. Let's talk about Sherlock Crescent, Brook Valley days.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. Growing up in Sherlock for me it's almost like the foundation of toughness. It wasn't unusual, on a daily basis to see someone getting shot, kidnapped.
You witnessed that.
Very, very territorial.
Yes, that's true.
Politically influenced.
Oh, yes. Demarcations were clear.
Yeah. So, moving from Brook Valley, which was primarily affiliated to one political party.
Right. Sherlock is the other.
Sherlock total opposite.
Party, yeah.
So I kind of was exposed to both of them.
Yes, yeah. And tell us about your family setting now. How was it? How many of you were in the home? What was the family environment like, and the economic challenges that you had?
So the family setting was, primarily my mother and my three brothers. Right. At some point, I had
no father was at home.
No father. No father. The father, I guess, performed his duties, and he was gone. He was out of the picture. So my mother was primarily responsible for raising us and teaching us the values that we needed to learn to be successful. She was a laborer, work at Boulevard Lounge in Duane Park.
She was just
work,
Lounge.
Common worker every
so
single day.
she was the main breadwinner. The father wasn't sending in the money.
No money from father. So, that's why I have such a profound respect for women. In particular, my mother. And to this day, even leaving this morning at 85 years old, she still commands the respect. She gets it.
Mother 85 now?
85 and still going.
Yes, yeah. So she was there for you, Peter, when there was no father. She was there for you and your brothers.
Every single
Working
day.
hard, eh?
Every single
Coming
day.
in late, I would guess.
Every single night. And what's so amazing is that she has no formal education.
Yes.
She wasn't formally educated. She was, my grandmother had 4 children. And out of those 4, she was the eldest. So she was, for lack of better terms, a sacrificial lamb.
Yes.
So she didn't get a chance to get a formal education. And one of the funny things is what she talks about today at 85 is keep on reading. Education is important. She still pushes it.
Yes.
Even when she's talking to my daughter, her granddaughter on the phone, who's in college, she tells her study hard. Education is key.
Yes.
So she's actually promoting something that she never really received.
How did you yourself do at school? Perhaps average or so, not so well?
Well, average was never good in our house.
Where did you go?
So I will tell you, I went to Duane Park Primary.
Duane Park Primary, yeah.
And it wasn't like I could go home and get help from my mother with homework.
That's right.
Common entrance exam was back in those days. First go around, I think I did pretty good because I ended up going to Calabar.
You passed?
I passed.
Oh, you passed?
The first go around.
Oh, first. Not
so,
bad.
I was there at Calabar, and I was smart academically.
Yes.
Academics was never an issue for me.
You did well at Calabar?
I did well at Calabar until I ended up leaving after around third form to migrate to the U.S.
You didn't complete Calabar?
No, I did not. So after third form, that's when I went to the U.S. at 15 years old.
Did you play any sports at Calabar?
I played football.
Football?
I played Colts at Calabar.
Played Colts?
Pepsi Cup. Correction. Played Pepsi.
So you left at 15 to join your father?
Right.
In New York?
So at that time, it was in Springfield, Massachusetts.
Oh, Massachusetts, yes.
Yeah, my father and my stepmother were in Springfield, Massachusetts.
So tell me about life there.
Life there was challenging. You know, not just life in the U.S., but life in that
In
household,
that household.
with my father. You know,
Didn't hit
granted,
it off too well.
did not, did not. You know, I did not know that he existed the way he did. All I knew was what I saw here in Jamaica whenever he visited. And to me, everything appeared to be okay. Affluence. When I got to the U.S., it was a different story. You know, I quickly realized that there wasn't any job. He was not working.
Wasn't working.
My stepmother was working. So at that age, at 16, I had to start working. So I worked in the fast food industry after school,
Okay.
so I could bring that check home to him.
You brought on the money to him?
I had to bring it home to him.
So he had a woman and his son working to support
That's
him.
right. Very manly.
A same lifestyle, yes.
Yes. So the lesson I learned from that is don't do it. It'll never be like that. See, in life you can learn both good and bad lessons. You know, everything that you see, every behavior that you see from someone, you can learn from it. And
So you were
unfortunately,
resolving to yourself, Peter, that you weren't going to get anybody pregnant unless you could afford
and I
to
did
properly
not.
look. And you didn't?
I didn't do that.
Good.
So, you know, luckily for me, even the behavior that my father modeled for me, I learned from it. And unfortunately, there weren't good lessons. However, I made sure that that behavior, I did not replicate it.
That's good.
You know, I have 2 children.
Yes.
They were in wedlock.
In wedlock. Yes.
Right? I have a son and a daughter, and that is it. Nothing wrong with multiple children, but I have 2.
And you have tried to be a good father.
I
The father
think,
that you didn't have.
and that's a life lesson that I learned from that. You know, I make sure that I'm accessible to my children. I talk to my daughter every single day. You know, reach out with my son. We communicate.
Yes.
And I think that's important.
Yeah.
I saw what my mother went through. I saw the life that she had to live. I saw the struggles that she went through just to make sure that we had food to eat, to make sure that when time for us to go back to school, we had the books and the necessary supplies. I saw the things that she did to when she moved from Brook Valley to try to get us somewhere safer, even though it was Sherlock.
Yes.
But in many ways, it was somewhat safer back in those days. You know, and being in those 2 environments, one of the greatest things my mother did for me was to expose me to those 2 environments because, like I said, it laid the foundation for me to understand how important life is and how important it is to deal with people and accept them as human beings. Treat them right.
You had the unfortunate experience, you were telling me, Peter, of witnessing your mother held up one night, coming after a hard day's work at gunpoint.
Gunpoint. So Boulevard Lounge and Restaurant closed down at night. And typically what happened in those days, there's a driver who would take all the workers around and drop them off at their respective locations. So at that time, I'm up. You know, we lived in the projects,
Yeah.
you know, the high-rise, but I'm looking out the window,
Yes.
just watching the car pull up, watching her walk away.
Yes.
But then she stopped walking, and I kind of witnessed what happened. You know,
Must be harrowing.
got
for you.
robbed, and her bag got taken, and got roughed up a little bit.
Oh, boy.
You know. But the funny thing is, you know, life runs a circle. And being out in the street, you know, word travels. And even at that young age, I learned who was the perpetrator of that crime.
She had found out.
You know, and years forward after I migrated, I came back. This same young man, you know, is talking to me like nothing ever happened. Wanted to see my green card and wanted to know if he could use it and borrow it.
Borrow your green card.
Right. You know, that's just a lack of education. You know, he was not very smart.
But he didn't know you knew
Did not know
what he had
no.
done that night.
Because this happened under the mask of darkness. We're
Yeah,
talking
man.
about midnight.
Yes.
You know, midnight in a big open area. Didn't know anybody was watching. Thought they got away with a perfect crime. But no crime is perfect. There's always somebody watching.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Horrific experience, but nonetheless just taught me how tough my mother is.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you realize you needed that toughness too to survive.
And in many ways, it has helped me. Because even when I decided to join the Marine Corps, which ironically I knew nothing about when I was in the U.S. Everybody, you know, I've heard about the Army and the
Yes,
Navy, but my
not the
focus
Marine
was
Corps.
in school, and I'm playing football, you know, soccer, and was thinking about what's going to be next.
Let's take the break here. A Jamaican retired Sergeant Major in the U.S. Marine Corps, Peter Hall, telling us how he reached to this major position in the U.S. Marine Corps, the difficulties that he had to navigate on his way. We take our first break on Profile.